Hello, my name is Eugene Fernandez. I am a junior DevRel at openq Labs, and today I'm joined with Erik Salazar. He is a software engineer and a smart contract security auditor. Erik, thanks for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Really appreciate it.
To start off, could you tell us about who you are and what you do?
So, yep, kind of what you said. I am a software engineer as well as a smart contract security auditor. Also a UNCC graduate. So, for people who don't know, University of North Carolina, Charlotte. And then a blockchain enthusiast is something that I call myself as well.
Nice. How did you get into software development?
So honestly, it's kind of a long story, but we'll kind of keep it short. When I was in high school, I ended up getting an internship at a software company, but back then I didn't do much software stuff. I was kind of just learning the business side of everything. Eventually, I kind of just started seeing a bunch of the software developers kind of do their own thing. Kind of, I saw them like writing code, and I was like, that is so cool. What is all that? I remember one software developer was like, hey, just look, this is what we're doing. This is what we do. We built this app and you do this, to this, and then you create this. And I'm like, oh, this is awesome. So kind of got into that. And then year after year, they invited me back for the summers for internships. And then I kind of just started doing more and more software stuff and eventually got into college and started doing more. I just decided, okay, let me do software development. Let me do CS.
And I'm sure that your experience in software development was helpful when you got into crypto and Web3.
But yeah, very, very much so. I think that's probably the baseline as to why I got into it. I don't think I would have gotten into it if I wasn't a software developer, to be honest.
So yeah, so how did you get into crypto and Web3?
Honestly, that's well, how did I get into it? Well, 2 years ago, once I graduated college, I was struggling finding a job. Needless to say, I was like, okay, what can I do? Because a lot of people didn't want to hire me because I didn't have any experience, but it was kind of hard to get experience when you don't have a job. So I was like, okay, let's see what I can do to make some money. And then I started researching like, okay, ways to make money online. And then eventually got into crypto. And I'm like, okay, what is this crypto thing about? And I started mining Raven Point, some altcoin that's still out there. Hopefully it's not a scam because I have a bunch of coins with it. But um eventually I was like, all right, I'm mining this stuff. I don't know what it's about, but who's developing all this? And then eventually I was like, all right, how do you develop a crypto coin or buzz it, blah. And then I got into it and started seeing, okay, you write it with Solidity, you write smart contracts with it, or you can do smart contracts with it, you can do a bunch of stuff with it. And then eventually just got into that like rabbit hole, and that's how I got into Web3. And then eventually started learning the terms, the buzzwords, and the rest is history.
Do you have any suggestions or advice for people who are developers who are junior and don't have a lot of experience under their belt? How could they get into Web3 more easily?
Honestly, the best way to get into Web3 is just to just hop in, just start, researching stuff that might seem interesting to you. So if you're, strictly like the development side of a lot of things, just start researching how to write Solidity code or how to write smart contracts. I know there's a bunch of other languages, being tasked around like Viper and stuff. Just start doing tutorials online. That's how I got started. Just yep, doing small tutorials and eventually, building projects on your own. And that's probably the easiest way to start doing it, to be completely honest.
Nice. What are some of the upsides and downsides of freelance development?
Honestly, so back when I was doing freelancing for smart contract auditing, probably one of the benefits of it was that I didn't have to work that 9 to 5. I could set my own schedule and kind of just, do what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. Obviously, it required some discipline there that, maybe not a lot of people have. So that might be a downside too. But probably one of the biggest downsides is when you're first starting off, you're probably not going to get paid a lot. You're probably going to do a lot of work for free, which is fine. I mean, that's how you get your experience. But I mean, just know that, as soon as you start doing more and more of it, you start getting the grind, you start understanding, okay, and start, disciplining yourself. Eventually, you'll start getting paid real well. But I'd say that's probably downside is, you probably don't know when you're going to get paid or if you're even going to get paid for doing a small project. So that's something to keep in mind about the downsides of it.
What do you mean by you don't know if you're going to get paid when you're doing a project?
So So when I first started, I guess I was doing work for Code for Arena, the DAO. Basically, they're a smart contract auditing firm where they, projects go and they're like, "Hey, we want our smart contract audited." They go, "Okay." They release it to the DAO, and there's a bunch of wardens, what we call them, basically a bunch of other security auditors who go and look at their smart contracts and try to find bugs. And it's a big competition. But back then, from what I remember, was that we didn't really know when we get paid. We just know that a contest was a week long period to to submit your findings, and then from there you'd wait x amount of time, and then you'd get a deposit into your wallet address. Usually before, back then, I would say it took about a month, maybe a month and a half, sometimes even 2 months, depending on how fast they were. But from what I've heard, it's gotten a lot better now. It's a lot faster. But back then, I'd have to just get schedule if I had bills that I needed to pay. I'd do contracts as early as I could, and then hope that I'd get paid just in time to cover whatever bills I had to pay, or buy whatever I wanted to buy. So that was kind of my issue back then, is I never really knew when I'd get paid. I just knew I'd get paid eventually.
Taking some risks, I guess, to start your career is always
Right.
a good way to do it. That sounds very similar to what I did. I'm not a software developer, but I was into podcasting at the time, and I had started my own podcast. And I graduated in 2020, right when the pandemic hit. So the way I convinced my first boss to hire me was to be like, "Hey, look, I can write. I have a university degree. I can also create my own podcast. Let me work for you." And he said yes, but getting your foot in the door is like the hardest part. And once you have that first thing of experience, everything else comes so much more easily. So kudos to people who can jumpstart themselves by working for free or for very risky payouts and stuff like that, because it's
Exactly.
really hard to do, but it makes a big difference.
Yeah. And now looking back, I think I should probably go and report that stuff in my taxes. I don't even know how I'm going to do that. I should probably hire a CPA on that. But we'll get to that when we get to that.
Right. We'll cross that bridge when we get there.
There
So
you
you
go.
also mentioned that you were making tutorial videos. Did you get a lot of traction with them, or was that just to make a online resume?
Honestly, I ended up not really following through those tutorial videos, to be completely honest. I think I did one, I never posted it, and I was just like, okay, I don't know. I never actually did much with it, but it was really good practice to just learn how to write code, or at least Solidity code, and then also do smart contract auditing, like tutorials as well. But I never really did much with it. I never really continued much with it, but it just was honestly personal practice that I'm glad I did, because the videos are still there. I can always go back and post them and edit them, but but they'd serve me as experience, and just understanding like how to do certain things that I wanted to eventually get better at.
Yep. Once you're able to teach someone else something that you've learned, you really know that you've learned it well. So it's a great
Exactly.
idea. Um, okay. Have you noticed any other problems that programmers who are getting into smart contracts and Web3 work face?
Yeah, so basically, there's basically two separate spheres. Like during my day job, I'm usually doing like C sharp or ASP.NET development, which, I mean, when you're doing that type of work, it's kind of laid out. You have like a certain structure that you need to follow, but Solidity is completely different. You have unassigned integers, you have structs now, you have constructors that are, public. If you don't, or I guess it really depends on the version of Solidity that you're in. But before, constructors were public, and so you'd have to be careful what you'd put in a constructor versus what you put in other functions and stuff like that. Yeah, in regards to security, there's a lot of stuff that you need to keep in mind that I think certain developers, when you're doing like Web 2 stuff, you're not really paying attention to, because it's already all laid out and already made for you. So I think that's probably one of the biggest differences, is like just basically understanding like your variables, like your unassigned integers, your constructors, understanding exactly how to do proper Solidity like development, and understanding like the security risks of what happens if you I guess subtract or take out funds before verifying or something like that. Like stuff, really simple stuff like that you tend to not even look at when you're doing Web 2 development, and it's just a whole separate sphere at that point.
Got you. And are there any websites or organizations that helped you with your journey to learn Solidity? I know you mentioned one earlier.
Yeah, so I guess my first step for me was going into Code for Arena. I think that was probably the biggest help is just going in there and reading other people's audits, understanding, okay, why is this a bug? Reading through the reports helped me a lot understanding, okay, these are safe practices when writing Solidity code. Now, there's also like a lot of tutorials online. I'm doing one right now called Alchemy. They're a really big helpful tool when it comes to writing Solidity code. Like right now, I'm just learning a bunch of front end Web3 stuff through them, and I think that's probably one of the biggest helps was Alchemy, Code for Arena for safe Solidity practices, and then you know like YouTube stuff like that. What is it? What was that? I used to use Coursera, I think too, just to do some simple courses. But yeah, you can always just type in online like tutorials for Solidity. I'm pretty sure you'll find one on YouTube that's very helpful.
Gotcha. How did you learn about OpenQ?
Honestly, I met Andrew at the BitDAO party in Bogota, and he was explaining to me what OpenQ was. And then I was like, this is really cool. This sounds exactly like something that Code for Arena is doing. And then I started looking more in depth, and I was like, no, this is something completely different. This is stuff for freelance work, which is exactly what Code for Arena is kind of doing as well. But I was just like, yeah, I fully support this. Once he started showing me the ins and outs, a demo of it, I was like, this is genius. Like whoever thought of this was smart. Being yeah, that's how I basically learned. Andrew O'Brien came up to me. He was like, "Yeah, I'm doing this. Check us out." And I was like, "Okay, let me look through it." And it was a brilliant idea. So I was like, "Okay, I can get behind this."
And what do you like about it?
Honestly, I think like the whole freelance option of it. I think a bunch of developers now or a bunch of people are trying to move away from the 9 to 5 stuff. So that, there's a bunch of developers who just want to do simple work, and get paid for it. Like for example, I'm currently looking for freelance, like I guess for more freelancing gigs. So OpenQ is definitely would be something I'd look into. I want to get paid and do like certain projects. I just go to OpenQ and just see what contracts are available and just start, making that project, whatever that company is looking for. I think Honey Labs is one that I was looking at. I don't know how old that contract is, but that's one thing I like about it. Yeah, it's just the freelance part of it, being able to just hop in whenever I want and then build and get paid for it. It's really easy. It doesn't require any type of commitment.
I just added a contract to OpenQ yesterday from Snapshot for $400. They were asking for something. So
Mm,
definitely check that out. This episode will be out in a few days. Today's December
for,
7th, so
for
that'll
sure.
be good. Alrighty. And did I have any other questions? How can people reach out to you if they'd like to get in touch?
Honestly, I'm mainly more I'm on Twitter. So I think my handle is Erik Sal 1217. That's my Twitter handle. You can also reach out to me in LinkedIn. Just type in Erik Salazar. I can't remember my URL link for that one, but also Telegram as well. I can always drop that information down, wherever. But yeah, Telegram, Twitter, and LinkedIn are probably the best ways to reach me if anyone wants to talk about anything else.
Awesome. Thank you very much for joining us, Erik.
No problem. Thank you very much for inviting me.